Hi, May 24. This is the K8s Infra meeting. Just a reminder that this meeting is under the code of conduct, so please be nice to everyone in this call. Do we have new people? There's no obligation to do an introduction, so but if you want to do one, feel free. Next, we have, I need to adjust my screen. Yeah. As usual, we do the billing report. So do we have something new here to see? Okay. Okay, we have cost down. I think that's related to Artify registry. Yeah, that's related to Artify registry. Yes. Yep. So basically, we were serving traffic from a bucket that was not, not a non-present bucket, S3 bucket. We were serving in a specific region because of that, and we had an incident report related to this. I think Ben mentioned that in the last meeting about this. Because of that, we were like serving ingress costs. That got fixed. Now we see costs going down. We now, we're back to what we were expecting. So except that, I don't see anything very specific or any. Okay, I think cost increase in compute. Sure. Yeah, I think we noticed last time there is an increase in compute related to, it's possible it's related to the build cluster. I'm not sure, maybe many possibilities, job moving from Google to our own. Yeah. So it's going to be difficult to fully investigate that. So I'm not really worried because the increase is not that significant. We don't, yeah. I think I'm also
say,
yeah.
Sorry, finish. I want to say something later.
I think we need to, I'm pretty expecting costs increase because we're going to start moving jobs over the different build cluster. So I'm not really surprised by this. I'm not really worried about this. You want to say something, Marco?
Yes, I think this is okay because before April, like 30th of April, was a bit strange. We had KubeCon and we had cold freeze that month, like until mid-April or before KubeCon. So lowest activity is kind of expected, and now that people got back from the conference, that we unblocked main branch, like I think it was 15th April or something like that. I think people are picking up PRs again, and that's like causing stuff to get up and that more CI jobs are running. So I would say that is kind of expected. And now that people are getting more focus from enhancements to PRs to actual implementations, I guess that is expected that cost of CI is going up. But we still didn't have any major migration of jobs besides those few that we did. I need to psych with Hippie about that, like where we are studying with collecting the jobs that needs to be migrated. And in general, I think this is mostly related to more activity and people picking up their stuff after the period that was a little bit busier with other stuff.
Okay. Yeah. Other than that, there's like nothing specific to report. If I go over the dashboard. Okay, for the month by month, we are not fully in the month, but I think we still are in the same trend as last month. So I think that's pretty good. Is there like any comments, something specific we want to talk about before I jump on AWS? Okay, let me add this. Is increase we'll go this way. Okay, let's apply for the entire trip. I don't see anything specific right now regarding AWS, unless I'm missing something. I think we're good. Oh, sorry for the one thing I would like to do in the future is that delete job accounts we don't use at all, because I say a lot of accounts not used. So I'm curious about why are we keeping them.
They're
Is that
load-bearing
something-
unused accounts.
Sorry, what?
I said they're load-bearing unused accounts. Something somewhere is referencing them.
That's the thing, is like some of them are not referenced at all.
Well, you won't know that until you delete the account.
Yeah. So well, there's like the deletion phase is 90 days, so we can trigger, and there's no way to disable service on AWS like in GCP. So I'm like, yeah, we now have an entire organization and we have now multiple Boscos account. We should probably start to delete them. I will see that as a benefit because we can force now people to migrate to the community infrastructure by deleting those AWS accounts.
We also don't want to have any that we can't account for now, because it's only going to get harder to figure out as we add more accounts for more things, where these other accounts came from and what they're doing.
But all of them are basically specified somewhere right now in case.i repo, the new account. So
yeah, right. I mean that we don't want to keep around accounts that we don't seem to be referencing anymore and we don't know about, because the longer we wait to do that, the harder it will be to figure out where they came from.
Yeah, we should start delete some of them, because there's like, I did a quick research, there's some of them are not referenced at all. Nowhere in test infra repo. I mean, in any GitHub organization we own, some of them are not referenced at all.
Some of them might only be in like a secret or something, but again, we shouldn't be doing that without some kind of record. We should find and eliminate or fix those.
Secrets, even that. Okay, I'm gonna try to figure out how we can safely delete them.
Well, like for example, the CI stuff that wasn't using Boscos yet, some of it was referencing like a secret with an account credential that points at some account. But we don't want to keep doing that anyhow. That's what I meant by secrets. And you wouldn't see that in the repo, except thankfully most of those did at least have a comment above the the preset for the secret, but we don't want to depend on that.
Okay. Any question regarding this? Sorry, I can see. Yes, now.
We want to cycle through, take 5 of them or so, and just try to do one undeletion just through another process, so we can have some confidence in deleting larger swaths and know how long it'll take to go through the undeletion process.
Mostly when you delete the account, is not fully deleted until 90 days. So basically, it's gonna be the account will be suspended before before it disappears, before the account is gone. So I'm not really, and revert that is mostly opening a case on support. So I'm not really worried about
Beautiful.
The deletion process.
One question about that. Is it possible to do any sort of audit for AWS accounts and save what we have in those accounts? So if we eventually figure out, okay, we deleted something that was used by something, we can easily recreate such account and know what do we need to recreate.
I'm not aware of a way to do that. You have to ping AWS folks. Maybe they're more expert on that to figure out what is each side of the account. But in any case, I'm more interested to job migration to the community owned account. That's why I'm trying to figure out what's inside this account. Because if you migrate a job, any job right now, that will give us some insight about exactly what's needed to make those jobs fully running. And so instead of investigating each account, what are the specific or custom configuration we have in each account. I'm more interested in job migration than account replication. Something like that. Because I think what you're looking for is some kind of resource inventory over the entire organization. or a specific account, which is not something I'm aware in AWS as a feature, but we might ask to folks see what's happening. If they know something or how we can do this. If not, it's not the case. We just need to just migrate the jobs to the community cluster.
Okay, that makes sense. Thanks.
Okay. Oh, Chief is not here. I had a question for him. We have open discussion. Marco, you are next.
Yes,
first.
it's me. Yeah, I left a topic about monitoring for EKS problem cluster. So the idea that we have in general is something that we discussed. We have a dedicated monitoring stack for that cluster that is running, that is based on Prometheus and Grafana, and that is not exposed in any way at all. To access it, you need to have access to the cluster. To do something like kubectl port forward, get access to the Grafana service, and then access it from the browser. But that's not ideal, and that is definitely not accessible by community. So if they start migrating some jobs, run into problems, they don't have any tool to investigate what's going on, to, for example, figure out if there are any problem with resource limits and requests and stuff like that in general, especially now that we are, for example, enforcing resource quotas and limits. Now, the idea that I got, speaking of that, is that we expose that stuff. And I brought this up for discussion with folks that are working for it. This is Patrick and Jan, who is not on call today. But generally speaking, Jan created a PR that is basically creating a load balancer service for that Grafana setup, and that is going to expose it. But we need to figure out a domain, like how are we going to access it? And I thought about using something like monitoring.proud-eks.k8s.io. But then we need to figure out how to manage that domain and how to manage certificates. Like managing domain is not that problematic. We can add an entry to the DNS configuration, and someone, for example, Dimson Arno, can reconcile that DNS configuration. But the problematic part is how to handle certificates, because I don't think we have something similar to what we have on GKE, so that you, for example, manage a certificate resource so that it handles certificate for you. That's something I didn't found for AWS, right? What I found is that this ACM, I think it is called like that, and it allows you to request a certificate for your domain and basically to attach it to AWS load balancer, for example, whatever type of load balancer are you using, like Elastic Load Balancer or whatsoever. But the issue is that how should we handle that, because there is a DNS verification process and that requires some additional records. And in that case, we should probably manage ACM with Terraform. I believe so. And there's that too. So I briefly discussed that with Dims today, and Dims believe this is one of way forward, but some discussion with Ben and Tim, I think Tim is not on the call today, will be nice to figure out what is the way forward.
The DNS stack is already handled currently not through Terraform, but through go ahead.
Yeah, we have an automation baked on OctoDNS that allows you control DNS with YAML. I'm one of the owners. You just like send a PR, and when it's approved, the robot automates it. And I think we want to stick to that, because we also have some tooling to help make sure that those changes work safely. Like we roll out to a canary zone first and have some tests and things to make sure that it all actually rolls out properly. It's pretty mature, and if you need to do things like certificate provisioning, I mean, usually we would do something like an Acme challenge and delegate just the like Acme subdomain. to some external service. So that's what we're doing for like GCLBs going forward. Before that, we would like create an LB, get an IP, and then add the IP to the DNS for the specific entry. We shouldn't need to grant external systems direct access.
Yeah, that part for sure. I mean, I understand the DNS part. It's pretty easy, at least for what I found out. To just create a PR and that is reconcile. That part is easy. It is just to figure out certificates, like, because I don't believe we can use the same way that we use on GK with manager certificates. So we have to use AVS approach, and that is going to be a little bit different. Maybe I can send a link to you that Dim sent to me, and maybe you can tell me how feasible it is to do something like that on with our DNS configuration.
We previously used Cert Manager within clusters for what it's worth. And yeah, I think I really hope we can standardize on Acme challenges. It's just like, it's a good standard and it allows us to delegate things like this without handing over DNS API keys or anything like that.
You mean we could use like Cert Manager and maybe a Let's Encrypt and do it that way?
With
I
Cert
think-
Manager, to be clear with Ben's suggestion, is that we can point the DNS at a domain that could be managed anywhere, as far as for the DNS-ON challenges and whatnot to provide those certificates.
It looks to me like ACM supports something very similar, but not quite the standard Acme challenges, where you CNAME a token subdomain to their validation domain. We can just do that in DNS.
Okay, if that's possible, then I think we can do it ACM.
I think that validation is only possible if you're using Route 53.
Not necessarily, but sorry, just a quick knowledge about that, if I may. Do we want to perform a DNS-based verification or a different based verification for the cert?
DNS with a delegated CNAME would be preferable.
So yeah, you have separation or segregation to entities without requiring any cross authorization provisioning. The only thing on the setup on the cert essentially would be just the values in the record need to set up on your DNS or IPAM console, and that would be the most separated approach. But maybe I'm sorry for joining late. Maybe I misunderstood the requirement, so that's why I asked on the chat.
Yeah, I think that is an option. Like if you want to use ACM, we can add a record that's going to point to that, whatever is required, and that would work. The only thing I can't figure out from docs is if you need to keep that record all the time, or eventually if you change it later with, let's say, what you want to point domain to. For example, if you want to use CNAME, and that's what you have to use if you use Elastic Load Balancer because you're getting a host name, or this is a CNAME that you have to keep all the time.
For the cert verification or for the load balancer?
For cert verification.
The cert verification is only needed for the initial verification, but I think for an ongoing renewal basis, you need to keep that cert. But again, that's what is the price of keeping that record up there? Any records that you set, or more precisely, any certificates that you set, if you want to set multiple certificates, the same record will be used as a verification. So you only need to add essentially one record to authenticate that you have ownership. And from that point on, we have carte blanche on all certificates that we set up on the account level, to some level.
Yeah,
but the thing, sorry, go ahead, Ben.
We have existing left. Like I said, this looks like the Acme challenges that we're using. It's a different name than the Acme standard, but it's the same idea. You CNAME a subdomain for verification purposes, and that way you don't have to worry about any of this. You're just forwarding it to their DNS challenge responder. We can just leave those. We can just leave those entries up. It will mean that renewals happen, and it's totally decoupled from load balance lifecycle. This is best practice going forward. It would be nice if they were all Acme standard, but this looks like probably something that was just bootstrapped before DNS 01 was finalized, and basically the same thing. I don't think this is a problem.
I give an example of chat, like because, for example, let's say you have monitoring PAO K8s, for example, name is not important. This is a C name already to point to ELB, because ELB is something like, it is basically a host name. It is not an IP address, so we can't use a record. And then you need to add the same name as a C name to support cert verification, right? The problem is that that's going to conflict.
No, cert verification is on a subdomain with the special name for the verification. They're underscore token and.
Oh, okay, I see.
For
okay.
Acme certs, I think it's like underscore Acme. It's the same idea.
Yeah.
You put a one level deeper subdomain for the verification. You forward that to the verification endpoint, and then on their end, their DNS resolver handles the challenges.
Yeah, sorry, I was looking at the wrong column. It is so late for me.
So it's just a one-time thing. You add the C name to our DNS, and you're done. You don't need to touch it again.
Yeah.
Okay, then that's an option. I think we can do that.
This is already the workflow we're using for all of our other certs going forward, so should be fine.
Okay. Then we can handle the ACM with Terraform, probably create the certificate request DNS records, and that's basically it.
Yeah, it looks to me like you actually don't even. I mean, you don't need the. You don't. You can create the challenge independent of that because you're just forwarding it to the resolver domain. But
You can use the output of the verification, I think, for the record as a reference for them. But I think since these two systems are separate, that would be a semi-manual step. Nevertheless, you can, when importing a cert, you could state in its parameters, or the data resource on the Terraform side, you can state whether you want it is available. So it won't be, it would fail upon if it's handling or getting a cert that has not been verified yet. But again, that's later terms or later steps.
Yeah, Marco, I can follow up with you offline. I just went through doing this for the GCP equivalent on a couple of our domains. This looks pretty much the same. Shouldn't be a problem.
Okay, yeah, sounds good to me.
And I'm happy to assist. I'm doing it multiple times a month on AWS side from the certs and domains. So happy to pitch in.
Thank you.
That's the only item in the open discussion. Is all anything else people want to talk about? Okay, I have like two questions, one for Marco and EP. Are we good with the scalability test account? Sorry. Is it now on board? Or is there something else we need to do?
Sorry, can you repeat that or no?
I was asking about this scalability account. Want to make sure this is on board in Boscos. My question was for you and Marco.
Yeah, I'm not sure anyone reached out to me for those accounts and onboarding them. I guess I don't even have access to that account, so we can probably follow up tomorrow if you're around, that we figure out adding them to EKS Probuild cluster, so that we do it. Create credentials and put them, create a resource for that in Boscos. That can be done. We can do that tomorrow if you're around.
Yeah, Evie, can you take care of that, because I'm gonna be on
Yep.
PTO again soon, so my bandwidth is kind of limited. I'm asking this because Teams pinged me last week about this one to make sure we make progress on this.
Marco,
My second question.
Go ahead.
Go for it. I will. My second question is for Ben.
Marco, you got access to me. That disconnected. We'll roll that forward.
Okay, yeah. Let's figure that out. We will see how we can handle it. But yeah, I think it's not a problem.
Thanks, folks. And my second question for Ben. What's the next step after all those accounts are properly set up? Like how we trigger scalability jobs in AWS.
There's some follow up with SIG scalability folks to get that working properly against clusters that aren't cube up. We have a demo job for this, but we'll want to make sure that it's using the Boscos, that it actually starts running the scale test instead of standard E2Es. And I think the log dump script needs porting. That's probably the last part's probably the trickiest. The rest is, look at existing jobs and change the config options to select the right tests and to use Boscos instead of a fixed account.
Okay, so the last part still rely on K8s, right?
The last part is probably, SIG scalability has a separate script that they own right now. We don't need to go into too much detail here, but basically, instead of fetching from the nodes to the proud job and uploading, when you're doing scale testing, you really want to run something that uploads from the CI node or from the cluster nodes to the output, because you avoid a lot of extra data transfer, right? Instead of having to pull it back into the job pod and having a massive 1,000 nodes worth of system logs and then uploading those to the job storage, we have it set up so that when we run the cube up jobs, we run a script that like SSH the nodes, grabs the system logs and pushes them up from the remote machines. We don't have, that's not supported on other types of clusters currently. We should port that to work with K8s clusters. That's going to be a little bit of a blocker for really big clusters. It is a pretty major performance hack for CI.
Okay.
And we need the logs to debug the cluster. I think anybody could hack on that, but I think we were hoping for scalability work on that because it is only used by scalability jobs. For other jobs, it isn't that big of a deal to just pull them down to where we're running the tests and then stick them in the artifacts folder like any other output from the tests. And that's more portable. But for scale tests, it becomes performance sensitive enough that we're going to want to employ a workaround similar to that. And right now, those scripts are in test infra and only work on KubeUp GC clusters because they depend on SSHing to the node and having access to upload with GSUtil.
Okay, so where are we putting those logs? The existing GCS bucket or an S3 bucket?
They're currently going to the existing job results bucket.
Okay, so
it would probably be okay if they went somewhere else. I think this is a follow-up concern once we get the tests running, but it will need to happen.
Okay.
So make sure the job is using the Boscos pool. Just change that config and then or do any follow-up that needs to happen with the kube test implementation, and then make sure that the test flags get switched to run the scale tests instead of normal cluster E2Es. Those are the next steps.
Can we async trying to figure out a job candidate to basically ensure we use the proper AWS account for scalability?
We have one. There's the tracking issue in test infra for running scale tests on AWS, and it references the like MVP that runs sort of a scale cluster, but not the right tests, and it was using a fixed account.
Okay.
Like K8s account.
Sounds good. Anything else before I give you 70 minutes of your time?
If Doc has had a hand up.
Yeah, sorry.
No worries. Quick follow-up question regarding the log federation. Is there any thought to place any filters on the federation itself to ease on the data transfer costs? Essentially only send off the events that are relevant. Do you have that mechanism in place?
So we're dumping, like, for example, the kubelet logs from each of the nodes. We
Mhm.
won't know. We want to dump them because people need to be able to come back after the CI has failed and understand like what's wrong with the cluster. So if we try to filter it, we won't know. In the future, we can look at, storing logs within the cloud that it was uploaded to. I don't think that's a huge priority right now. It's mostly just that it's slow to do extra copies, as opposed to like the cost. I mean, similarly, we don't cap the log sizes right now. We're just serving them directly out of a bucket. The real cost issue is just having to pull them all into the job and then upload them from there versus just directly uploading them from where they are. When you have like 5,000 nodes, that starts to become a pretty significant bottleneck to completing the run.
What retention policy to or ergo lifecycle if we can't diminish or reduce the data transfer costs, can we maybe reduce the contents of the bucket?
We have one. I think it's 90 days currently. And there's some follow-up to like tune that sort of thing. But I don't think we need to block on that for this. And same thing, like if we had to run some of the other ways where we just pull logs down to the nodes and upload it, that's fine to start. We're running smaller scale ones, but if we want to seriously switch to using K8s instead of the GCE shell scripts, so that we can have a tool that works for both clouds, we will need to have something like the scale test log dumper that works ideally on K8s Oz and K8s GCE, and that will have to be a special thing. Like we can't just use the Kubernetes API or something. We need to actually get on each of the nodes and grab all the system logs, even if the nodes are in a bad state. So you need to do something like on G-Cloud we use, or on GCP we use G-Cloud Compute SSH. We'll want to do something like that.
On AWS's side or a cloud agnostic solution?
I don't think I think we'll want to make it support both. I don't think we want to jump to cloud agnostic. Usually we do that by like using Kubernetes API features, but we kind of fundamentally need to reach the nodes. We also need to know like what are the VM names and that kind of thing. It'll probably need to be K8s and AWS plus GCP specific. And if we ever have a third cloud, we can extend it. We only need this for scale tests. So we probably don't need to be running scale tests on like every cloud, and we don't have the resources to do that today. But we do want to get out of only running scale tests using the GCE bash scripts. And once we can we're starting as well just with K8s AWS, but something that I'm hoping to press for later is to switch the GCE ones we still have to use K8s GCE, so we can very closely match and get away from those single cloud shell scripts. But for scale testing, the scale test log dumper is kind of unique.
Understood. Yeah, I'm just thinking about the options that I'm more of in terms of sending logs. If you're running on AWS, you could use AWS's tools like the CloudWatch agent, and you could maybe add some files there during the run and only activate it for that process. But I'm not too sure there's like S3 direct to S3 unless you're trying to do it maybe like a bash approach. So maybe that's why I want some clarification.
Yes. So very briefly, Kubernetes CI basically has a standard thing where there's a directory that is specially handled, and when you run some tests, they can dump things into there, and they get persisted into a storage bucket that's surfaced through the CI UI. So there's some standard expectations around that, and that includes some automated tooling that like scans the test results to find things like clusters of flakes that are happening, like nearly identical errors, things like that. So we'll want to continue to store things there to support all that tooling and like, you know, all the users in the project that are expecting logs to be there. And we have some tooling built on top to do things like, you know, viewing the files and whatnot. It's not great, but it's what everyone's used to. So we'll probably just want to, you know, get them copied into there.
Understood. Thank you for the clarification.
Mhm.
Anything else before we close the meeting? Sorry, I can see if they like a hand raise or. Okay, going once, going twice. I think we can stop here. Thank you everyone for coming. See you in 2 weeks.